Let's think a little bit tonight about judgments and assessments. And I know that we're kind of taught young that it's not really always, or really shouldn't ever really judge. But, the reality is that we make assessments and we make judgments about things and about people all the time. I think that's a natural human trait that we have. For example, sometimes people will say to me, Father, in the summertime, I don't like to go to church in Epworth or in Bankston because it's just too hot. I'd rather go to Piasta or to Placid or to Farley because there's air conditioning. They're making an assessment, they're making a judgment about what is going to be comfortable and best for them. When we come into church, we kind of find a place to sit and where it is best for us to sit. A lot of times parents will say to me, who have young children, we like to sit in the back. Just in case the kids start to act up, we can get them out and it's not quite as disruptive. It's a lot easier to do that rather than we're in the direct middle of the church or in the front of the church where there's not necessarily an exit path. So that's an assessment. It's a judgment that we are making. Even about people, when we go out into public and somebody comes up to us, a stranger in particular, one of the first things that we do is we kind of assess, is this a friend or is this a foe? Is this somebody I can be safe around, or is this somebody maybe I have to put my defenses up and maybe possibly even defend myself a little bit? We make judgments about that, and we do that really a lot of times before we even speak to the person. We do it based on looks and, our preconceived notions, our prejudices, our stereotypes that we have and such. We constantly do that. This past week, kind of a spontaneous thing, I'd agreed with some friends of mine to get together on the 4th of July. We really didn't have any plans, but then all of a sudden, we ended up going into Chicago and going to the Chicago Cubs baseball game on the 4th of July. So good place to go, by the way, and plus they won, so that was good. But we parked downtown. We figured that would be easier, maybe with the crowds that are going to be around Wrigley Field, and we took the train out to the stadium and just got off there. So I've ridden in subways quite a bit when I lived in Baltimore and Washington, and you kind of know the subway etiquette of you don't really make a whole lot of eye contact with people. You only really speak to people that you are directly with, and you kind of keep your voice kind of low. That's just kind of an etiquette that you have that happens on subways. And so we got into the train, and we're heading out to Wrigley Field, and the doors closed. And there was this young man, I would say probably in his early 20s, and he did not look like me. He was not of my race, my nationality. He didn't dress like anybody who lives around here or anything like that. And as we got on the train, we sat down, and all of a sudden I looked over, and he opened up his backpack, and this is a young kid, about 20 years old, and he took out a knitting needle and yarn and began to knit. Not what I intended. Talk about you make a judgment about somebody, and this was not what I was expecting. And boy, he was good. He was really moving. It was like watching my grandmother. He could really kind of get that yarn and that needle going and such, and it looked like he was making a potholder, but I wasn't really sure. But it was really quite interesting. There he was, passing time on the train, this, young man knitting on a train. Not what I expected. I had made a judgment about what this person was like, and it certainly didn't fit that. So that is something that we do. And the point is that sometimes we can be challenged in those judgments. We can be absolutely wrong. Just because we think we have all the information about someone, we don't. And that really, I think, is the challenge and the point of whenever we meet anyone, somebody new or somebody maybe we think we have known for quite a while, the possibility that we will discover something new and unexpected is always there. In the gospel today, Jesus went into his native place. This is where he grew up, Nazareth, where he's comfortable. Everybody knew him, and he went into the synagogue. Here's the local boy who's been making it big, and, we've been hearing all these stories about you, and so come, and into the synagogue he goes, and he begins to teach and to preach. And all of a sudden, they kind of turn on him. Like, who do you think you are? Aren't you the carpenter's son? And don't we know your relatives over here? And how dare you speak to us like that? Their lack of faith, Mark says, Jesus could not perform any sort of miraculous deeds. Just last week, we heard the story of how Jesus had cured the synagogue official's daughter who came to him and said, "My daughter is ill, you've got to come." And on the way, this woman who had been hemorrhaging for years and years, had spent her life savings and visited many, many doctors, could not be cured. She believed that if I just touched the garment of his clothing, that I will be cured. Her faith was so strong, and it happened. Yet when he went into his own town, people made judgments about him. They refused to believe of what was possible that he could do. That's the danger about when we sometimes do that towards others. And I think that's the challenge. St. Paul makes it clear today that we do get humbled throughout life, that there are times that we get this thorn in the flesh. 3 times I prayed, St. Paul says, to remove this, yet there it was. And it is, he realized, that when he was weak, he was strong. And I think that's the gift of a lifetime of humanity, that as we go through life, we realize more and we come to acknowledge and accept that which we're not necessarily very good at or failed at, but also the challenges that we faced that we rose above. That's the gift. And I think that's the point in the lesson that we receive from these readings today. So be careful about who we judge, what we judge. We could be surprised. Be open to the possibilities of what God is saying to us.